Hey guys, Tom here. I've got a couple of guys from my local meta.
Hi, I'm Wilfy.
And I'm Jesse.
We're just going to go through Honor and Profit, the latest expansion for Netrunner, card by card. Quick overview just to give you guys our opinions. We'll start with the first card.
It is Harmony Medtech.
Yep, so this is one of the new identities. So this is kind of the fast advance, agenda rush, whatever your choice of word is. Each player needs one fewer agenda points to win the game. So the first big one, I guess, is it's 40 cards minimum deck size and 12 influence. And how does that really play into the fast advance meta at the moment?
12 influence is a big problem, I think, for any fast advance deck. The best two fast advance cards in the format at the moment are Bardic Labor and Sand City Grid, neither of which...
3 and 4 influence respectively.
Yeah, neither of which are in this faction. So, I mean, you could play Sand City Grids, you could splash just for those. But as we go through the rest of these cards, I think we're going to develop a bit of a theme of Jinteki has been short on money. Does this set fix it? I'm not sure. If it does, then perhaps this could be viable. But I think without additional money help, Jinteki is going to struggle if it's only pretty much splashing for Sand.
Yeah, you really need to be able to float a lot of credits to play those Bardic Labors. 3 Bardic Labors, 3, I mean, you have Trick of Lights, but you're playing tricks without the Wayland Ice, so I don't know, to be seen where this one's going to go. It might need a bit more support to get there. So I'll move on. So the next one we've got here is Nisei Division. So this is 45-15. Whenever you and the runner reveal secretly spent credits, gain 1 credit. So this goes with all your Psi, Ice and other effects, which there are a lot more of. It's only going to be as powerful as the existing Psi stuff, or as the Psi stuff develops.
I think, I think there are only, including this set, maybe 6 or 7 Psi cards. I stand to be correct on the exact number, but there's not a huge amount, one of which is Bullfrog, which I think is eminently unplayable. So, when it comes down to it, you've got pretty much Snowflake, Future Perfect, Caprice Nisei, and possibly Psychic Field.
And also maybe the cast, what's it called?
Oh, Cerebral Cast.
Cerebral Cast.
So possibly 5 cards that Psi that are good.
Is Psychic Field the agenda or the asset?
The asset.
There's
Future Perfect's the agenda.
Future
the 5 for 3.
No, there's another one. We'll see it as we come.
Oh, sure.
The 3 for 1. I think that might be a Psi spender. I think it nukes their hands. But
we'll have a look.
3 for 2.
It's a 3 for 1. But either way, it's a limit 1 per deck.
Yeah.
So that's the 3 for 2. Yeah, so that
just deals them 1 for each agenda.
Each agenda in the score area.
Oh,
yeah, so that's not a Psi.
No.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So even it just needs more stuff to get there.
Yeah. So I mean, you've got 4 or 5 cards. I think Caprice Nisei is a really strong card. It's one of the cards that's sort of been waiting for this set. Hasn't had to wait too long. But if Jinteki after this set is viable with enough strong in-faction cards, this identity supports Caprice Nisei really well. It makes Snowflake a viable piece of ice, and I think the other cards, which we'll come to later on, could potentially be good. What Jinteki's really been missing is an identity that gives it economy.
Yeah, and really, each of the other factions has it, but Jinteki doesn't, and this is probably one of the reasons why it's the weakest faction at the moment, just because so really any sort of thing which could assist their economic game is welcomed, even if it might take a while for it to be good.
Cool. Alright, we'll move on to Tenet Institute.
Yeah, so Tenet Institute is a identity, 45 minimum deck size, 15 influence. When your turn begins, you may place 1 advancement token on a card if the runner did not make a successful run during his or her last turn.
So there's a lot to this. So it's got to be a successful run. So 1 successful run means you're not doing this. You can place 1 advancement token on a card. So this can be ice, this can be agenda, it can be an upgrade, it can be anything.
Yes, unlike manually advancing something, it doesn't have to be advanceable, which could add a bit of mind games to the faction because it doesn't narrow their range of what an advanceable thing could be as much.
Sure, and look, you've got other things like you can advance a woodcutter, you can advance a rezzed Harsacrology AI, but even with the existing cards, like putting an advancement token on a snare, like it adds another element to the game. The bad side being that once the runner gets going, how many times are you going to get to use this?
I think one of the things that I compare this to in my head when I've been sort of evaluating it is subliminal messaging. A card that I thought was really good when it was spoiled. I put it in a couple of decks, a very defensive Wayland deck that I've been playing for quite a while, and I found that there were very few turns when I was actually returning that subliminal messaging to my hand. So that's a marginal effect that I was just getting a small incremental advantage out of sometimes, but far less than I thought I would. I wouldn't want to put all my eggs in that basket and stake that on my identity. I wouldn't want to take an identity that's going to give me a reward only when the runner doesn't make successful runs, because that's what runners are trying to do the whole game.
I don't think this identity is going to be on the top tables, but it's, you know, it's certainly going to trick someone out. Someone's going to die to it. But yeah. Next one. So onto the agendas. House of Knives.
Yeah, 3-for-1s face a big barrier to being playable just because there are so many of them, and really they have to compete with 3-for-2s, but we have a 3-for-2 now, so.
And also the 2-for-1s as well.
Yes, and also 2-for-1s, so they're kind of being pushed from all sides in terms of their playability.
House of Knives, I think, though, it might get there, just because it's a really unique effect, but it'll only get there from a synergy basis. It's already good, going to be pretty good in core Jinteki, getting that extra net damage in there, and it's 3-for-1, which the deck traditionally plays a lot of. But also with other effects that manipulate net damage, Kronos Protocol in the future, and a couple of the other cards that we'll get into later.
Yeah, I think the effect of this card is you place 3 agenda counters on it when you score it, and you can remove a hosted agenda counter, which is that ability you can use at any time. Do 1 net damage, and you can only use it during a run, and only once per turn. Once per run, sorry, and only during a run. So it's got that restriction on it. I think in concert with cards like Kamenu and Psychic Field that do damage to the runner equal to the number of cards in their hand, this would be really powerful. Having that ability is quite strong. So I think those cards are coming up, and we'll talk about them a bit later, but I think this definitely has some synergy applications, and it's a good agenda, which is what Jinteki needed.
Speaking of good agendas, the next one, Medical Breakthrough. So it's a 4-2, already it doesn't look good so far, but it says lower the advancement requirement of each Medical Breakthrough by 1. This ability is active even while Medical Breakthrough is in the runner score area. So for every Medical Breakthrough that's scored by you or the runner, it's going to turn this into a 3-2 and then a 2-2. So looking at the fast advanced identity, so where you only need 6 points, having this be a 2-2 is fantastic.
Yeah, that's insane.
The effort on the first one, 4-2, and a lot of decks are already pressured into playing a couple of them. NAPD, Contract being, I guess, the go-to one. I think this is probably better.
I mean, if you compare it to NAPD Contract, they have to pay 4 to steal NAPD Contract, so they're 4 credits down. So you're getting the benefit in the sense that the runner's going to be poorer, or sometimes may not be able to steal it. I think NAPD Contract is indisputably the best 4-for-2 in the game at the moment. This one, on the other hand, saves you a click and a credit. Well, someone scored it.
Really more than that.
Yeah, and makes it able to be advanced in 1 turn, which is a huge benefit. Yeah.
Like you can leak the first one, and then you've got another 3-2 in your deck, essentially 2 3-2s. You get the second one, you got a 2-2. So this is going to be really good, and I think it's going to be one to watch out for.
And I think what you were trying to say there, Wilfy, is that 3-for-2s are more better than 4-for-2s than simply clicking a credit.
Well, yeah,
of course.
So,
Alright.
Yeah, giving yourself the chance to access more 3-for-2s and even the first 2-for-2 in the game, once 2 medical breakthroughs are scored, I think is really good.
Yeah. So next one.
Philotic Entanglement, so it's a unique agenda, so you can only have 1 in your deck. You can only have 1 in play, but also when you score Philotic Entanglement, do 1 net damage for each agenda in the runner's score area, and limit of only 1 Philotic Entanglement per deck. Sorry, I got a bit confused there by the unique diamond next to the name, because unique diamonds next to names usually mean you can only have 1 in play, but it's also got the restriction. You can only have 1 res, but it's also got the restriction limit 1 Philotic Entanglement per deck. I'm personally a bit disappointed that it's limited to 1 per deck. I don't think it's particularly overpowered. Dealing 1 net damage for each agenda in the runner score area is not an amazing ability for a 3-for-2 to have.
This is a theme that's coming out of all the deluxe expansion. So each corporation was getting one limit, one per deck. So in that aspect, you compare it to Director Haas' pet project. I think this is better, 3 for 2.
Yeah. I think the problem with it is that Jinteki is the only faction coming into this box that didn't have 2 3 for 2s already that it could play 3 of. So this sort of would have equalised Jinteki, and I think that's one of the big things that's holding it back at the moment, is not having enough 3 for 2s. And unfortunately, this takes the number of 3 for 2s you can have from 3 to 4 rather than 3 to 6, which is disappointing. Yeah.
The effect on it though is pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
Like if you're scoring this, even if you're hitting them for a couple, that's still more effort they have to put in to get back into the game. Back doing probably in a position where they want to be doing things.
Especially with the cost out identity.
Yeah, and you're doing an extra one, and if they have 6 points, you score it and they're done. They just die, which is fantastic.
Or if you're playing Course Out Identity with Sense and City Grids, which I think is one of the best ways to play the Course Out Identity, this means that when you score this, they have to spend a turn recharging their hand, which gives you the chance to score another gem.
Exactly, which is exactly what the Sense and decks want.
Yes. So I think it's an auto-include in pretty much every Jinteki deck.
Yeah, pretty much.
Basically.
Alright, next one.
The Future Perfect. It's a 5 for 3 agenda, and if it's accessed when not installed, then you play the Psy game, so 0, 1, 2 credits, and if you spend different amounts, then they don't get to steal it.
Yeah. So this only really going to be working when it's in R&D. Obviously it works when it's in archives, but how many times is it going to be there without old mate Jackson helping you out?
That's true.
5 for 3s, I mean, is Jinteki really the best corp to be playing 5 for 3s?
Well, at the moment it didn't even have a 5 for 3, so...
You did have some decks playing Priorate.
Yeah.
Well, sure, but no in-faction one.
Yeah. I'm not a fan. I think that even if it said whilst it was installed, then it would be getting there. But as it is, I don't think it's going to be playable. Yeah.
Yeah, 5 for 3s just require too specific a kind of deck, which Jinteki just can't really support at the moment, where you go kind of super slow and try and score really only after games are already being locked up, which Jinteki just doesn't have the economy or the ice to do at the moment.
Yeah.
I guess my perspective on 5 for 3s as well, having played sort of Wayland Scorch deck with a few government contracts, is that one of the ways you can get away with scoring 5 for 3s if you can put pressure on the runner that you're going to kill them the other way as well. If you're putting flatline pressure on, then sometimes you can find a window to score that 5 for 3. So there is a potential, I think, that Jinteki could force that in its own way using the damage effect. And the Psi obviously plays into the Psi identity that we discussed earlier, the Nisei division, in terms of economy, which makes the Psi effect a little bit more powerful because you're getting money back, which means that you're able to choose between the 3 options more freely than the runner is. And I think likening it to an AP contract a little bit, having any agenda that is harder for the runner to steal from R&D is a powerful thing for the quad to have. So it's worth consideration.
Cool. Alright, so next guy, so we've got a unique asset, Chairman Hero. 2 to res, 6 to trash. Runner's maximum hand size is reduced by 2. And he also has the kind of the Director Haas thing going on. If he's trash bombing access, the runner scores him. Is worth 2 agenda points. So, look,
and 5 influence.
I'm 5 influence.
Just like Director Haas.
Yeah, exactly. So, look, I think this guy is pretty interesting. The obvious application: you res him at the end of the runner's turn, and they have to clean up down to 3. Plus any brain damage they may have. So, look, I think the more obvious application here is with Scorched Earth. You get them down to 3 and it only takes 1. But the 5 influence for him or the influence for Scorched Earth, I mean, you really got to pick your poison. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's obviously where my mind goes first. I mean, it was the same thing with the HB Ice from the last pack.
Geary Labyrinth.
Yeah, Geary Labyrinth, which did the same thing in terms of reducing the maximum hand size by 2. That's where your mind goes first. 3 cards, Scorch Kill. But again, I think Scorch decks are really tight for influence as is. They're definitely not going to be able to find 5, let alone 10 to play 2 of these. And 4 influence per Scorched Earth, plus the influence for reliable tagging, I don't think is going to be viable in Jinteki. So,
keyword there, reliable tagging.
Yeah. And the effect, I don't know that it's powerful enough in Jinteki. Most of the net damage cards are responsive, and they happen in the runner's turn.
Yeah.
So.
And none of us have even touched on the drawback.
Yeah,
that,
which is huge.
Sometimes they're just, Wizard's going to get in on you and he's just going to take all your heroes. So, yeah, look, it might get there, but I don't think it's going to make a big impact. Next up, Mental Health Clinic.
Yeah, so Mental Health Clinic, it's an asset, costs 0 to res, 3 to trash, gain 1 when your turn begins, the runner's maximum hand size is increased by 1, and it has 2 influence.
I'm a fan. I like it.
Yeah, me too. I think it's going to be quite good.
When you're not trying to flatline or anything like that, it's better than a pad campaign, and sometimes that's all we really want.
I guess if we compare it to pad for a second, it's 2 less to res, which is good. It's 1 less to trash, which is a downside. And what you touched on, if you're not playing a flatline deck, then the maximum hand size is not really a drawback. So I think it's about whether you are willing to pay that extra 2 up front for the extra 1 trash cost. And I guess that remains to be seen. That's a deck building decision, but it's definitely a viable card. Pad's a good card. So.
Yeah. And, I think from a runner's perspective, there are very rare situations where you have 5, you draw a 6th, and you don't have 1 card that's very obviously horrible in your hand that is going to get discarded. If you have all these good cards, why aren't you playing them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Kick on from there.
So the next card is Psychic Field, and it's an asset where you play the side game whenever the runner exposes or accesses it. So unlike the other traps we've seen, it also triggers when they're exposing it, which is a very interesting ability which we haven't seen before.
Yep.
And what it does, if you win the side game, of course, is it clears the hand. So that's, it's an extremely powerful ability if you can have it trigger at the right time.
Yep. And it accesses, so this is going to go off from R&D as well. It doesn't have the clause.
It does. It says
while installed.
While installed. Okay, there you go. So it's not completely busted.
No.
So
it's 2 to trash as well, which is something. It's better than a lot of the other traps. Junebug 0 to trash, Snare 0 to trash.
I don't know. I think a lot of these, it's got the same problem as Snare when you're trying to install it to make it do something. Rarely does that actually work. The whole big thing with Snare is you just want them to hit it off R&D.
Yeah.
And there you go. The exposed part, look, maybe just when this set comes out and everyone's playing Jinteki and everyone suddenly decides that maybe I want to pack a couple of infiltrations or a code cracker or something, maybe it'll work. But I don't know. I just don't like these types of traps. I prefer the advanceable ones where it gives you another extra element to play with.
I guess one of the interesting things that I just thought of, because we just did Mental Health Clinic before this, is that it goes quite well with Mental Health Clinic in that if you play a card with no ice in a remote server, if Mental Health Clinic does see play, people might assume it's that and want to check it. If they do check it, they get punished if it's a psychic field. So I guess that just adds another element to that bluff. But it really is hard to pull off that bluff, as you say, with a card that's not advanceable.
One influence, though, something to keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely. I think it has the most future outside of Jinteki, where you still have at least some of the tools available that Jinteki doesn't, and you also get to have the surprise factor of them not really considering the fact of what it might be.
Cool. Alright, so I'll move on to the next one here. So this is a bit of a kind of hotly discussed one. So Shikyu. So there's an asset, 0 to res, 0 to trash, it's an ambush. When the runner accesses Shikyu, you may pay X credits. The runner must take either X net damage or add Shikyu to his score area as an agenda worth -1 agenda point. Ignore this ability if the runner accesses Shikyu from R&D. So it's going off in archives, it's going off installed, it's going off from hand. The effect, or you're dumping 5-6 credits into it, basically saying, hey, you die, or you take -1 agenda point. I don't know.
Just -1 agenda point. If you look at the games which actually occur, it's so often to run it with 8. In fact, it happens so often that we pretty much don't consider it as being strange. So I'm skeptical of this card's usefulness.
Sure. The existing House of Knives, the popularized deck with a lot of 1-point agendas, that's where it might see play, I think, because then it's like that deck's more likely to have the runner has to win with 7 points, and it's setting them back means they have to steal another agenda, take another net damage. Outside of that, I don't
Again, though, I think the weakness there is credits. You have to pump credits into this to make it a viable threat, to force them to take the -1 agenda point. Firstly, anything that gives your opponent choices is generally a bad thing. Anything that puts your opponent a little bit further away from winning but doesn't put you closer to winning is also not a great thing. And the other thing about those decks is, as I was saying before, I think Sandstern's the best thing to try and play in those decks so you can pump your low advancement requirement agendas through it and actually give yourself a viable chance of winning through agenda scoring. And you need a lot of credits to be able to do that. So pumping 5 or 6 into Shiku is not really going to be viable very often.
No, I agree. Sure.
Next up.
Tenderline, yep, so this is a 2 to res asset. It's got 3 influence, 4 to trash. You can spend 1 click to swap 2 installed pieces of ice.
Look, I don't think it's very good. Typically these types of assets aren't really that good, unless we see a combo that, you know, specifically requires you to be swapping ice around, and that combo is extremely good. I don't know, like, lets you reset your chums and your Inazumas.
I actually don't mind it, because there's so much Jinteki ice, so as you said, Charm, Sensei, various different things that want to be at a particular place in the server or have more things in front of or behind them. This is an effect that we haven't seen before so broadly. The only other card that I can really think of that does it is Sunset. I think that lets you rearrange ice in one server, and rearranging in one server is certainly not as good as being able to swap 2 pieces from anywhere. So I don't mind it if you do have some if you want to build that sort of tricky ice deck. I think it makes it more viable, being able to do this and install your ice at any point, lets you bluff out your RSVPs or your chums in the first couple of turns, rather than having to hold on to them. So
I guess, you know, at worst, at least it lets you move. Like, if you do get the credits to res 1 toll booth, it lets you put the toll booth where you need it to be.
Yeah.
But the thing is, how many of these are you going to try and run?
Yeah.
You know, you never want to see more than 1, but if they trash it, you want to see more than 1. So
exactly. Fighting for deck space is really the big thing, where you can't really rely on playing a card which can be trashed to do what you want it to do, but also if you're going to play a card like this, you need a lot of things which are good with it. So you kind of have the problem where it's not reliable, but it's not good unless there's a critical mass of things working with it as well.
I don't think we're there yet.
Definitely not at the moment, but maybe soon.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah.
Cool. Next up, Cerebral Cast.
So Cerebral Cast is a 1 cost operation, and you can only play it if they've made a successful run. So that's the Power Grid Overload clause. And so you play the side game with them, and if you win, so you spend different numbers of credits, of course, they choose either to take a brain damage or take a tag.
I like this. I think it's actually really tricky. It's going to have the right deck, where, you know, they don't know if taking a tag gets them scorched. So they probably take a brain damage, but if they take a brain damage, it's still great for a scorched earth deck.
Maybe they get Chairman Hero if they take a break down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
other things that are a bit better than Chairman Hero.
I mean, there are lots of ways you can utilize a brain damage.
Yeah. It's low cost as well. So you're at worst you're spending 3 credits. You know, if you're playing the Psi Identity, you're only spending max 2.
Yeah.
So I reckon this one will get there.
Yeah, I think actually the fact that it costs 1 is a huge boon to its playability, because it's kind of a little bit situational, but the fact that it doesn't pressure your economy too much, especially in the Psi Identity, to play it means that you can play it at an opportune time, which is always the problem with these kind of cards with restrictions, is that if they require you to have too many credits, or maybe another strange situation, then they're not always able to be good at the time where you want them to be good.
Sure, yeah. And look sometimes, you know, people are still playing Katie. There's playing Armitage code bustings and stuff like that. You know, sometimes taking the tag means they lose the code busting, lose the Katie.
Exactly, it's one of the only cards that can give them a tag on your turn without too much of a hoop to jump through.
Yeah, I mean, Sea Source is very powerful, and is widely played. I think one of the things that annoys me about this is 3 influence is a lot. It's limited its playability. In Wayland, I would love to just jam 3 of these in my Wayland deck, but unfortunately I can't. But yeah, I think it's really good.
It's no transaction, man.
Yeah.
Speaking of transactions, next one, medical research fundraiser. So 3 cost, like I said, transaction, 1 influence, gain 8 credits. The runner gains 3 credits. So, being the resident Wayland man, how do you feel about this?
I feel okay about it. I wouldn't want to spend influence on it. I don't think giving the runner 3 credits is very good. I think oftentimes it's actually really bad. Particularly in the in the Wayland deck, you want to be getting as far ahead on credits as you can. I know it still gives you +6 with the Wayland ability included. But they're getting +3 for nothing, so it only really puts you +3, so that's not great.
Yeah, I'm really not a big fan of this card. The problem that economy cards have is that oftentimes when the game goes late, they don't do anything because you're trying to advance your game plan, and drawing these cards doesn't really help. And having a card that's so ineffectual early because it limits your options or expands their options, I think kind of ruins how economy cards are meant to be good.
Sure. And do you think this will see play in Jinteki, or is Celebrity Gift just so good?
I actually think this is a lot better in Jinteki than it is in Wayland. I don't mind so much giving... the reason you don't want to give them credits in Wayland is because you want to be able to win the Seesaw Trace and double scotch them out, which you need a lot of credits for. In Jinteki, incentivizing them to run is not necessarily the worst thing to do in a lot of situations. If you're playing traps, if you're trying to get them to run more consistently, this could be good. As I say that though, I think about it and I think, well, runners always want to run more, so giving them the tools to do that is not necessarily great, but yeah, I mean, Jinteki needs money, and this is money, so...
Yeah. It's all about what you can do with 5 credits versus what they can do with 3.
Yeah.
Runner can do a lot with 3. Cool, we'll move on.
So Mushin no Shin. Mushin no Shin is a 0-cost double operation, so as an additional cost to play it, you have to spend a click. Install an asset, agenda, or upgrade from HQ in a new remote server. Place 3 advancement tokens on that card. You cannot score or res that card until your next turn begins.
So, I think this is pretty good. This is definitely one of the stronger cards to come out of the Corp side. Just from, like, we don't have anything like this.
No.
Immediately puts it to 3, so, you know, you can score mandatory upgrades next turn if you were splashing this. It has to be a new server, so you're not going to be, you know, fooling anyone, chucking a whole bunch of ice up. You can't put it there. You do get the chance to put 1 ice down though, or more if you have extra clicks. But I think that this really fits the Jinteki plan. It's essentially an economy card. You're saving the credits on the advancement. You know.
The thing I love about this is that you can put 3 counters on a June bug in your turn, which I think is a really powerful effect. It's essentially a classic bluff. You know, you're saying this is either an agenda that I'm going to score next turn, or it's something that's going to kill you, which is quite
it really has the highest reward of any of these kind of tricky cards in that, you know, either especially if you have 5 3s in your deck, which I think is the best place for this card, you are really either saying either I win or you, either if the bluff is successful, I win, if the bluff is not successful, then, you know, the game still goes on. So
outside of the 5 3s as well, you've also got Feed Layout, great target for Feed Layout, and Medical Breakthrough.
Exactly.
You do that on the first Medical Breakthrough, they steal it, who cares? Just open your deck up, maybe they don't, you score the Medical Breakthrough while it's at its worst. This is strong.
And it's good with 3-for-1s too. I mean, it's good with unorthodox predictions. An unorthodox predictions that's scored without spending any clicks is actually quite powerful as well. It sets up your next score in your remote that does have ice. So yeah, there's lots of applications. I think it's quite good.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Next up, Inazuma. So we're on to the ice. So Inazuma is a code gate, 3 to res, 5 strength. So already looking nice. 2 subroutines. First one. The runner cannot break any subroutines on the next piece of ice he or she encounters this run. And a second subroutine, the runner cannot jack out until after encountering the next piece of ice this run. So we've already found out that if there's no extra ice and they hit that second subroutine, they can't jack out. They have to access whatever it is. So I guess in a way this kind of, you know, beats the old White Chum was horrible sometimes, where it was the last piece of ice, didn't do anything. Outside of that, you look at the meta. I mean, everyone's playing Yogg. 5 strength code gate might just get there. It doesn't do anything on its own, I guess.
For me, a code gate that has 5 strength is good. Code gate breakers are generally the third breaker that people play. People want to have a sentry breaker out so they don't get blown out. They want to have a barrier breaker out because undoubtedly they're going to have that to get into servers. This is fantastic with Kamainu, which wipes their hand, which we'll come to a little bit later. If you have a scored House of Knives, that's a kill. It's great with lots of different Jinteki ice and lots of different ice in general that is damaging to the runner. Not being able to break the subroutines is a very powerful effect.
I mean, typically with the Jinteki, some people will stall to play their sentry breaker. So, if you've resed a roto early, all of a sudden you throw an Inazuma down. If they hit that Inazuma, they lose their sentry breaker. And then they're back to square one on that plan. And look, Roto's 4, it's not an unreasonable amount. Inazuma's only 3. This isn't like, we're not paying for Janice's. Jaina here. What do you think?
Exactly, I think this is definitely the best rate on this kind of effect we've ever seen. And so it has a very good chance to see play in the decks that want it.
And they're not jacking out claws, it's just great.
2 influence as well, maybe people are going to really like it in front of Rotos or Archers or something like that. Cool.
So our next one is Kamainu. I mentioned this one a couple of times. It's a 1 strength sentry that's 5 to res. When the runner encounters Kamainu, it gains subroutine, do 1 net damage, for each card in the runner's grip for the remainder of this run. So it has 1 subroutine that says do 1 net damage for each card in their grip for the remainder of the run.
This is good. It's still going to be pretty taxing. They're going to be running with 4 or 5 cards in hand. That's 4 or 5 subroutines, even for Mimic or any of the sentry breakers for that matter. It's still going to cost them 4 credits, which, for a 5 to res ice is pretty good. Weakness being the obvious Parasite. Dies in 1 turn, or if they have the console out, it dies immediately. I don't know, do you reckon paying 5 credits is worth it?
Well, I mean, it definitely has a very powerful effect. Like, these kind of cards, the fact that you punish them for running and also punish them even if they have a breaker because of how expensive it is to break, I think definitely gives it a shot at the playability.
I would compare it to Neural Katana.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, so you pay 1 more. Realistically, they're going to be paying more 100% of the time with any breaker to break it. So you're going to be okay with that most of the time, and it's going to have a better effect most of the time when it does go off. It can't kill them on its own, but like I said, they always run with 4 or 5 cards against Jinteki. So
yeah, I think until we start seeing Mimic drop in popularity, which I suspect we won't see for a while, this card leaps about ahead of Netrunner.
Yeah, cool.
And I also just want to highlight, is it a dog? Is this the...
So
This is Pup. Komainu's a dog.
Is Komainu a dog?
Yes. So the Komainu or Komainu is it's the Japanese lion dog.
Oh, okay.
So you know all the statues that they have everywhere?
Right.
So...
Oh, cool.
I don't know why there's 2 of them.
And there's a Shinto Gate, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
So props to who did the art on this one. Liga I'm not going to try and pronounce that.
Yeah,
good work. Props to you.
Yeah.
Alright.
But I mean, maybe with more dogs in Netrunner, we could see muzzles soon.
Yeah. So next up we have another dog.
Another dog, just hounds all the way down. This is Pup, so it has 2 subroutines of deal 1 net damage unless the runner pays 1, and it's 0 for 1. Or a 1 for 0. It costs 1 and has 0 strength.
Yeah.
And 1 influence.
And 1 influence.
Yeah.
So this is really the Jinteki pop-up window. There's no better comparison, I think.
Yeah, you're not gaining anything out of it, but it's costing them more. That's pretty much it.
I mean, the fact that it's a sentry kind of balances out the fact that it has 2 subroutines rather than 1 trigger and 1 subroutine. It still costs, it's still a net 2, even because there's no 0 sentry breaker. So I think it's a little bit worse than pop-up window just because of its stats. But
and it doesn't get you a credit. I think one of the best uses of pop-up window is just as not only tax on them, but it's also enriching you.
Yeah.
It's a credit transfer essentially.
Look, I think this fits right in with the billion 3 for 1 deck.
Yeah.
Chuck that in front of R&D. Watch them spend some credits.
Yes, being worse than pop-up windows definitely doesn't bar a card from playability.
No.
Alright, next up, another big code gate. So we've got Shiro. It's a 6 to res, 5 strength code gate, 2 subroutines. First subroutine, look at the top 3 cards of R&D and arrange them in any order. And the second subroutine, the runner accesses the top card of R&D unless the corp pays 1 credit. So we've already been through the advantages of big code gates. It's fantastic. This is obviously the big brother of Yagura, which is already a fine piece of ice that we're seeing a fair bit of play. It defends your R&D even if it's not on R&D. So if they hit this on HQ or anything like that, you still get to rearrange, set up your draw, and also, hey, if you've got a snare in there, throw a snare at them. You know? Yeah, I think this is pretty solid. The 6 to res is going to mean that it's going to take the place of your selected kind of big ice. A lot of people prefer toll booth in that slot for obvious reasons. It's toll booth. Do you reckon we'll get that?
I'm a little skeptical of a 6 cost that doesn't end the run.
Definitely.
Yep. Unique effects.
That's true, but the fact that it can't, you're really relying on your big ice as the game goes longer to help you score things, and this is a bit worse at doing this than a lot of the other expensive ice you could play, like Wall of Thorns or the card we'll get to next. So
not only does it not end the run, it doesn't damage them. Unless you happen to have a snare in the top 3 cards.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't put them behind in the same way. I mean, Shinobi costs 7 to res, and that can kill them on its own. This costs 6 to res, and it's a pretty inane effect when it's compared with that.
Although considering that, unless they have meeting with a couple of counters, some R&D interfaces, if you do get to look at the rearrange the top 3 and there is something there that hits them, it kind of does end the run if this is on R&D.
if it's on R&D, yeah.
Yeah, so it's very conditional. For influence, it's not going to see play anywhere else.
No, definitely.
Look, still something to be aware of. I think.
The stats are good, and the ability could be good if there's a deck that wants this kind of ability, it definitely wants this kind of card.
Cool.
Okay, the next one is Susanoo no Mikoto. It's a 9 to res, 7 strength sentry deflector, which is not my favourite subtype of ice, I have to say.
Are there any other deflectors?
I think Bullfrog might be a deflector.
Oh.
Yeah. It's got 1 subroutine. If not running on archives, the runner is now running on archives instead of passing Susanoo no Mikoto. The runner cannot jack out until after he or she encounters a piece of ice.
So this one is unique. That's pretty. That's a pretty important one.
And 3 influence.
Yep. So once again, this is the theme. There's always one unique piece of ice. We saw Wotan in creation and control. I really like this one.
I think it's really good.
9 is not unreasonable. 7 strength is
It's insane.
very unreasonable for the runner.
It's
very high.
stops them cold, and if you have any sort of way to synergize with it, then you can unload everything you want on them from archives.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have sort of gone in their heads thinking about Shock and Shikyu and the benefits you can get from having the runner in archives. I think the biggest benefit is
They're in
that
archives.
they're in archives rather than in your remote service.
Exactly.
Got an agenda in it, so yeah.
7 strength and the run.
Yeah.
The big weakness here is that Fem still sees play very, very commonly. It is a big Fem target, but if you're only going to be running 1, which you're not going to run more than 1. They might just waste their Fem before you even resonate.
All big and the runner suffers from that.
Yeah.
Hadrian's is it's bad to get Hadrian's Fem, it's bad to get your
Yeah,
toll booth Fem.
Yeah.
Anything.
So look, hopefully they're not running it, or they have better targets, but even then, in Azuma, maybe you're going to trash that. Move on from there. We're on to the upgrades.
Yes, so this one's Neo Tokyo Grid, and the first time an advancement counter is placed on a card on the server, each turn you gain 1. And it's a region like Sansan and Shiloh City Grid.
That's not compared to
And
That's a
Amazon
good card,
Industrial
so-
Yeah.
I think this card's really bad.
It's probably a little closer to Amazon Industrial Zone's colour.
Yeah.
I mean, look, even if this card didn't say the first time, it was just any time, then
it's
there might
basically
be some
repeatable
kind of-
shipment from Sansan.
Yeah.
Which
I
is
don't
not amazing.
I don't.
I just really can't see ever playing this over bad campaign.
Yeah,
It's unthinkable to me.
true. And the artwork is kind of.
Let's move on.
All right.
Yes.
So we've got a Sysop. So this is Tori Hanzo. She's unique. She does have the diamond. 3 to res, 2 to trash. The first time you would do any amount of net damage during each run on this server. Instead, you may pay 2 credits to do 1 brain damage. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. It's very situational.
So first off, it's got a higher res cost than trash cost, which is 1 thumbs down.
Traditionally weak.
It downgrades any amount of net damage to be only 1 brain damage. So if you're doing more than 1 net damage, that may potentially not be a great trade-off.
Yep.
And it only works on the 1 server, and it only works the first time the net damage is done during the run.
And it's typically only going to work once, unless they're hitting Caprice, unless they're hitting Ash or something like that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're just going to get rid of her, get that problem out of the way. House of Knives is the best application with this, I think. You really, or if they're hitting a shock on, I don't think it's good.
I don't think, you have to jump through too many hoops, and the result isn't really that good.
Yeah, the result is 1 brain damage. So, look, if you get through all 3 of your Torii Hanzos, maybe you've done 3 brain damage.
Yeah, I just can't see. Can't see the use for it.
Alright, we'll move on from there. Onto the assets.
Yeah, Plan B. So this is a neutral card. It's an asset, an ambush. It's 0 to res, 1 to trash. Plan B can be advanced, which is a good start. If the runner accesses Plan B, you may reveal and score an agenda from HQ with an advancement requirement equal to or less than the number of advancement tokens on Plan B.
Look, the first time I took a look at this card, because this was one of the earliest ones,
I spoiled it quite a while ago.
From memory looking at there, it was really bad, and I don't think anything's changed.
It's so bad.
I have to shamefully admit, the first time I looked at this, I was like, this is busted, it's amazing.
You in fact told me that.
Yeah. And then I thought about it, and the situations where you actually played in the game, and I realized it's pretty awful.
Yeah, I mean, traps that you just can't do anything with it. Like, if you install advance, which is, I think we'd all agree, the most common situation for a trap, it doesn't do anything because you can only score a 2-pointer, and why didn't you just score that 2-pointer? And if you leave it for a turn after installing advancing it, then they know it's not an agenda, so they're never going to run it. So while I think it has, maybe a little bit of use with Mushin no Shin, that's I think maybe the only situation in which I could see it being good.
Maybe. Look, it is neutral, so you can score those breaking news on your opponent's turn.
Isn't that worse than scoring on your turn?
Yes. Definitely worse. Alright, we'll move on from there. So, guard.
I'm talking about guard. Excellent. Guard is very simple. 7 words in total. Guard cannot be bypassed and end the run. So this card doesn't really do anything strange. It just stops the most common early. It lets you score agendas early and stops the most common thing which would break that up, which is inside job.
So 4 to res 2 strength sentry. So we compare this to like roto turret, things like that. Are you happy to be resing a roto turret or a guard?
I think a roto turret still, but guard does, just because it has the extra subroutine and it has the ability to get them if they don't have a sentry breaker, which guard doesn't really. But the fact, really any card which, inside job at the moment is so ubiquitous that any card which protects you from inside job and actually lets you score agendas through it needs to be considered.
It's also neutral, Roto's influence outside HB.
It is only 1, but
Roto's not amazing when they don't have programs, which is where this is at its best early in the game.
That's true.
So yeah, I think I definitely don't mind playing more than 4 sentries in a deck. And if I was playing more than 3 sentries. If I was playing 3 rotos, I would probably chuck a couple of these in. If I was in another faction and wasn't playing 3 rotos, I would definitely chuck some of these in.
In props to FFG, this is a well-designed card, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely not too powerful, but in certain situations, it's exactly what you want.
Cool. And I guess this is the last piece of ice here.
On the other hand,
Yeah, rainbow. So 3 to res, 4 strength. We have the first ice with more than one of the key subtypes. So it is a sentry, code gate, and barrier, and it has 1 singular end the run subroutine. I can see where this goes, and it's probably in front of R&D as a taxing ice. but I don't like it as that.
This card just doesn't seem good.
Yeah.
So it's Eli with one less subroutine that they've already tinkering.
Yeah.
That's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
Just the problem is that it just has the weaknesses of everything without any of the real strengths.
Yeah.
Like, it's not enough more efficient than, say, Wall of Static for me to ever consider it playing this over Wall of Static.
Yeah. I think every faction has access to Wall of Static Bastion, already has access to the options that they should probably be playing over this, and they already probably have in-faction options that they should be playing as well.
I mean, being a code gate just randomly gets you when they're playing kit, and at that point, it's just not better than Bastion. So,
Yeah, I think the power level is just not high enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, props to FFG for trying something different.
Yeah.
But, alright, we'll move on. Diversified portfolio?
Yeah, so it's a neutral operation, transaction, 1 to play. Gain 1 credit for each remote server with a card installed in it.
So this is a card installed in it. So this only works for non-ice, so
Yes.
assets and upgrades, I believe.
And agendas. Yep.
It costs 1, so immediately you're going to have 2 remotes or be Wayland
More, really.
to make it,
Better than neutral.
it's better than, makes it neutral.
Yeah, it makes it neutral, yeah.
So I guess the only decks that you're going to see play are probably the ones that are playing like what's the...
Replicating the faction.
No, the one that it increases all trash costs. And they just go way sideways. But this seems like it seems very similar to commercialization, and it requires so much commitment to one thing.
That's the first card it reminded me of as well.
Yeah, and the best thing you get out of it is like a pretty good economy card in the late stages of the game.
Yeah, the reward is not there for such a huge cost.
Maybe if
it was 2, if it was getting 2 for each remote server with the card installed in it, it may be okay. But even then, you'd have to have 3 remote servers. Well, I mean, you'd have to have 3 remote servers for it to be a +5.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a +5 is still a reasonable goal. A +2 is not.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If it was 2, it would be good. At 1, it's awful.
Yeah, 2 would really be the sweet spot for it, I think.
Also, considering most of the decks that are going sideways are going to be playing pad campaigns and marked accounts and all these things that they're already gaining 3, 4, 5 credits a turn by the time this is good. So, not a fan. Next up, Fast Track.
Fast Track is probably one of the most important cards to come out of this expansion. It's a 0-cost operation that finds an agenda from R&D and puts it into HQ. There's really no good reason to dislike this card. I think the impact of it is astounding.
When it was first spoiled, we couldn't see the cost, the play cost.
I thought it would cost 4. That's what I thought.
So being 0 is outstanding.
That's not to say that this card goes in every deck.
No.
But the decks that this card goes in, it is extremely good.
Yeah, the decks that kind of wanted more agendas but didn't really want to have to draw cards to find those agendas. So it works especially well in Fast Advance because it's an agenda that sits in your hand that you can't be stolen by them, but that if you have an opportunity to score something, you can get it and score it next turn. Like, it minimizes the amount of turns you have to spend with an agenda stuck in your hand while still allowing you to play more copies of your best agenda.
It's just amazing in NBN.
Yeah.
If you have 1 or 2 Astroscoop counters, 1 or more, it allows you to get the agenda and score it off a Santa Santa in the same turn. In which case it's amazing.
Or even with only 1 counter, you can score a breaking news immediately.
Even just getting it and saying like, hey, you have to get it on my hand and take this agenda is still a big deal. And in that aspect, maybe that's a misplay, maybe it's not. It depends on the situation. But I think that this card may impact the playability of other cards from the runner's perspective. Maybe all of a sudden Nerve Agent, Legwork, HQ interface, maybe that becomes a bit better.
That's true.
If more people are doing that, rather than, and ultimately if you've got 2 Astroscript counters, you're probably going to win that game anyway. So I think that might make those other cards more
although that being said, I think one of the ways that Fast Advanced decks could lose if they got to 6 points is never being able to find the 7th because they're R&D locked out of it. Corporate Shuffle was one solution, but that cost 2 clicks. It's a lot more difficult to pull off. This is better.
Yeah. And look, just talking about within the box, Medical Breakthrough, grab that. Tell them to take it. Cool. Well, that's it for the corporation cards. We'll be back with the runner cards.
Thanks.
Thanks very much.